All right, for this presentation, we're going to be talking about communication. Now, communication is one of those subjects that we talk about and talk about and talk about, and then usually we still mess up on it. It's not one of those things that you can get really good at and then never have to worry about again. It's something that you're continually working on all the time. And we do end up with issues with communication all the time. It just happens. We are not very good at it. The communication is never 100%. And so there's always something new that we do wrong. There's miscommunications all the time. You're misquoted, you're misunderstood, you use the wrong words, or the right words are understood incorrectly. All types of things happen. So we're going to talk about it in a couple different ways here. Number one, our communication definition: transfer of information and understanding from one person to another. That is where most of these problems start, because we are looking at the transfer of information, but we don't often get to the understanding part of it right over here. We tend to work on this part, and we look at how wonderfully we can transfer the information, but we fail to check on the understanding. Where without the understanding, the transfer of information was a waste of time. 81% of a manager's time in a typical workday is spent communicating in one way or another. Think of any meeting, all of the emails, all of the memos, any way that you communicate, talking on the phone, 81% of a manager's time. So, very, very important. You're going to be spending a lot of time doing this. So, the communication process. And we'll go through this a little bit slowly, even though I realize you've probably seen this before. The sender encodes the message, selects the medium. We'll talk about what medium you want to use on the next slide. It's transmitted through a medium. Okay, so for example, a telephone. Then the receiver decodes the message, decides if feedback is needed, and then heads back the other way, expresses a reaction or feedback through a medium. Now, a whole bunch of ways this can go wrong. All right, you can have something go wrong when the sender is encoding the message. They use the wrong words, they use the wrong syntax, they say it too quietly even, or they decide not to say it at all. That's another type of sender error, is when somebody has something to say like, you should not do that, and they don't say it in time and get bit by a dog, for example. Hypothetical situation, of course. The medium can be a problem. Okay, there's something called noise. That can be actual noise, static, slurring. My brother worked booth at Comic-Con one time, and he said for 3 solid days he had to talk over all of the noise, music being piped over speakers, people talking, crowds of people walking by, other people trying to sell things right next to him, and you lose your voice trying to talk over them. Okay, it can break down here with the receiver when they're decoding the message, deciding if feedback is needed. When they hear something, go, I don't understand, or worse, back up just a moment. I'm perfectly happy generally with somebody not understanding what I said. I'd much rather have, I don't understand what you're talking about, than someone misunderstanding what I said and then going off to do whatever it is they thought that I wanted them to do. Okay? That's very, very dangerous, and unfortunately it happens all the time. When you say, oh, that's what you told me to do. I did not tell you to do that. Yes, you did. And turns out it was a misunderstanding based on maybe even a single word of how this is to be done. So it can break down there. It can even break down a little bit right here in the feedback, where you may have even thought that it was understood, but it wasn't. Or you thought that it was misunderstood, and it wasn't. And you go and try it again a different way, and suddenly now we're belaboring the point. An example from my own life, just quickly here. When my wife and I first got married, we planned to have kids, but as most newly married people without kids are, we had a whole bunch of ideas but no kids, and as soon as we have kids, then we have no more ideas. But theoretically, we were talking about if we had happened to have any sons, and I told my wife that I would plan to teach our sons to fight. Okay, and I'm thinking, Marks and Queensberry, boxing, wrestling, Greco-Roman, whatever, all that kind of stuff to defend themselves. She said, no, you shall not. And this was one of those debates we would have, and I'd talk about, they need to be able to defend themselves, they need to be able to do this and this, and she says, no, I do not want them fighting, and we'd go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it was one of those conversations that we would have. We would disagree politely, and then we would simply agree to disagree, and a few months later we would bring it up again. And it happens after I was teaching a business communications course, and this went on for a couple of years. After I've been teaching a business communications course, looking at diagrams like this, I went, I wonder if we have a misunderstanding here. So, I can remember still, we were driving home from somewhere, I said, let me ask you a question. What do you hear, what do you understand when I say I'm going to teach our boys to fight? And she said, do you really want to do this? And I said, yes, I want to do this. Tell me. And she said, it means that you're going to teach them that fighting is good, that it's the way to do it, that fighting is fun. And I said, okay, that is not at all what I meant. I meant teach them the techniques of fighting in the event that they need to fight. And she said, oh, yeah, of course you're going to do that. It was hilarious at the time, and it's probably getting funnier the longer it's been, because this was a 2-year-long ongoing argument that had no reason to even exist. Okay, two rather intelligent, at least on her side, people talking, we still could not figure it out. Where if I had simply added a word, teach them how to fight instead of teach them to fight, there would have been no argument, and we would not have had to talk about it so many times over a couple of years. Something that simple can cause issues, even between people who are used to communicating with each other. Imagine what happens if there are emotions tied up in this, or it's a boss versus an employee who is not happy. Easy to have miscommunications. Very, very easy. In fact, enough that you should expect that miscommunications are going to happen almost every day. Okay, selecting the right medium. When we start talking about mediums, we start talking about, okay, do I have something to tell a coworker? Should I instant message them using our company system? Should I text message to their cell phone? Should I call them on the phone? Should I email it to them? Should I do a teleconference? Should I call a meeting and get several people together? How should I do this? Well, there's not one answer to all those questions, because you have a whole bunch of different mediums and you don't want to use the same one every single time. Okay, the medium richness is what we're talking about, indicates how well a particular medium conveys information and promotes learning. A rich medium, best for non-routine situations and to avoid oversimplification. A lean medium is best for routine situations to avoid overloading. So think of the last time you were in a meeting, which would be a rich medium. Okay, rich medium, you can hear the other person, you can see the other person, you're getting both verbal and nonverbal communication. You might even have written communication up in a PowerPoint or in some type of other way. So we have a very, very rich medium here. How many meetings, though, do you go to where you say, you know what, this could have been done in an email? Email, very lean medium. Routine situations, avoid overloading, bam, there you go. It happens to me most meetings, I will admit. So it's best to pick the right one for the situation. All right. If you have something routine, hey, do you want to go to lunch? That does not require calling a meeting to discuss the possibility of going to lunch. Instead, you would write a text message or an instant message or a very short email saying, do you want to go find some lunch together? Done. Now, if you're going to talk about the curriculum changes you want to make to a certain program that have been controversial in the past, rich medium situation. You want to have people right there where you can do your level best to understand everything they're saying. You cannot do that over an email. You can't do it very well over the phone, although you can still get voice inflection. So, pick the one that best suits it. Where you get in trouble is when you're using this rich medium where you should be using a lean medium and vice versa. Often people try to use a lean medium when there's something unpleasant that has to happen, so they can kind of dodge it. And they say, oh, I'll just write them an email. I'll break up with somebody over a text, for example. That's a situation where they should use a rich medium and they're using a lean medium. Now, actual barriers to communication. Aside from, well, you have physical barriers, that's actual sound, time, space, and so on, something that it is actually preventing communication. My office phone sometimes cuts out, and when we cannot hear each other, there's no communication going on, for example. Semantic barriers when the words matter, when we have different understandings of words, for example. This can be exacerbated by things like jargon. We're saying, well, we're going to go to DRC and talk about the LDA report, and you're going, what are you talking about? This happens in every industry, happens all the time. You can also have different slang, different references. I'll admit this happens a lot. Happens with me, happens with everybody. You have to be very careful of that. Then you have personal barriers, which we'll talk about a little bit more, when individual attributes that hinder communication. So, some barriers. The sender barrier, no message gets sent. Talked about this before. When you have something to say and you don't say it, that's an issue. Could be a very big issue. The encoding barrier we talked about, not expressed correctly. There's a problem with the medium, the channel is blocked. The decoding barriers, the receiver barrier, no message gets received. You miss it. The intended receiver misses it. You accidentally delete the email. The email goes to your trash folder. You don't hear the announcement. One time, just a horrible story when it comes to traveling. I one time sat at an airport terminal at the gate waiting for my flight to come in. I watched this guy sitting with a couple of friends that were playing video games or something like that, and they kept calling, boarding for the flight to Los Angeles, over and over and over again. Final boarding, last call for boarding. Kept calling it. Finally, flight to Los Angeles left. I was waiting for a different flight. After like 10 minutes, one of the guys gets up from this little video game party, goes over to the desk and says, "Excuse me, when is the flight to Los Angeles boarding?" Yeah, message didn't get there. Feedback barrier, the recipient doesn't respond enough. It's like when you email your boss asking a whole bunch of different questions, like a 2-paragraph email, and they respond with good or respond with yes. When you've asked several different questions and they're mutually exclusive, that's a problem. Other personal barriers, faulty listening skills, tendency to judge others' messages. Often, if we don't like someone, we're going to judge their messages as stupid. That's happening politically all the time. Inability to listen with understanding. Either technically you cannot understand them, or you just don't like to listen to people. Stereotypes and prejudices. Oh, your type of person, for example, is generally not intelligent, so whatever you say has to be unintelligent. If you think that all big guys are meatheads, then if a big guy is talking, you're going to think, oh, that's so cute, he's trying to communicate. So be very careful of some of these. We're going to talk about listening skills, I believe, in the next slide. But there are sometimes the miscommunications are because of things that you need to do better. 6 keys to effective listening. Don't rush to respond. Wait and listen to them. Judge the content, not the delivery. If there's something about them that distracts you, notice that, acknowledge it, and try to eliminate it from what you're listening to. So even if they are dressed distractingly, try and ignore that. Listen to the content. Ask questions and summarize. One of the best ways, if you're talking to somebody and they are upset especially, is say, okay, I just want to make sure that I understand you. You're saying this. Rarely does that ever make someone more upset. It actually communicates that you are trying really hard. Listen for the ideas. Okay? Don't get diverted by the details. Try and think, okay, let's listen for the good ideas that are here. Resist the distractions. There's always distractions. You can always, especially with smartphones around, you can always have something to distract you. Best not to. Give a fair hearing. Okay? Don't shut out the unfavorable information just to hear a term. Republican, Democrat, Union, big business, affirmative action. We have those things, everyone does, that as soon as you start talking about it, you go, oh, I have to listen to this again, and you've checked out. Don't do that. Or try not to do that. All right, last couple things. Nonverbal communication. Some people would say up to 95% of your communication is nonverbal. Okay, expressed through your interpersonal space, how far away from the person you stand, your eye contact, facial expressions, body movements and gestures, touch, setting, and time. Now, here are some to-dos and to-don'ts. The problem with this one is that it changes with culture, changes with some personalities, but these are good general things to do. Maintaining good eye contact, leaning toward the speaker, speak at a moderate rate, careful your facial expressions, all good things to do. Remember, this is all very important, as all communication is. Thank you for listening to this presentation.